Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about information consumption. Okay, so I've touched on this topic a little bit in the past, and what I'm going to do here is kind of refine what I stated back then. But to kind of start, what do you think of when you think of information consumption? Well, 10 years ago, what I would have thought of was going out in the world and communicating with someone, or allowing someone to communicate with me. And typically, the way that communication manifests is through language, right? So you go to school and you learn, or you read a book, right? You consume the information, or maybe you watch TV and you consume information about recent events, right? Maybe you maybe you teach, maybe you are the teacher, maybe you are writing, or maybe you are the person writing the book to convey information to other people, right? And I want to highlight that the common denominator in all of these types of communication is human language, right? So we are observing the world, and we are finding patterns, and we are communicating those patterns with language. Now, if you were to want to ensure that there are no loopholes or no gaps in the information that you're consuming, then you'd obviously want to consume a large diversity of information, right? So you're not going to read one book and assume you know everything. You're not gonna learn about accounting and never learn a little bit of anything about engineering, right? You're going to try to diversify your understanding. And that doesn't mean you have to be an expert in everything, but maybe you dabble a little bit in everything to kind of improve your understanding of the world, right? But what I want to talk about a little more broadly is the information that is not consumed through human language, okay? So oftentimes we're kind of conditioned into this rational, logical mode of thinking, where we're really analytical, and we're thinking through problems through a lens of human information, through information that's communicated through language. And that's ultimately where our solutions come from, where we try to come up with rational, logical solutions. But in doing so, we kind of miss a large chunk of the information that is actually available to us. And that information is ultimately the information that nature communicates to you, okay? And we often separate humanity from nature as if we are separate from nature. And I think the reason we do this is actually it's kind of ironic. The reason we think we are separate from nature is because we bias the information sources that come from other people, and we kind of leave behind the information sources that come from everything that isn't humanity, right? And I'm going to get into some examples of what those other information sources are, those natural information sources. But first, I kind of want to focus on what this bias does. So the bias, again, first of all, it kind of makes you believe that you're separate from nature, because you are not valuing the other types of information that are not logical and rational, and that aren't communicated through that human language. And as that happens, you begin to believe that logical, rational, analytical thinking is the way to solve all your problems. It's the solution to everything. So therefore, you're looking for some kind of medication to solve some kind of ill that you have in your body, that has developed in your body. Maybe you have high cholesterol, so you're trying to take some kind of cholesterol lowering medication, for example. But here's the thing. If we live in 21st century Western culture, we're probably not spending a lot of time in nature, right? We're probably not necessarily very close to the foods we're eating, right? Our foods are probably shipped across the country, and they're put in these like refrigerated trucks that come over from 1,000 miles across the country, and then we eat that food, right? We're kind of disconnected from the food we're eating. And beyond that, we go to work. We might work in a cubicle all day. We might work 9 to 5 in a cubicle, and we're not getting a lot of sunlight, right? We're sitting in a drywall enclosure that is, it's got this HEPA filters, so all the air is filtered, and we're never breathing in fresh air. We're never breathing in the pollen, right? And therefore, we go out into nature and we breathe in the pollen, and we get sick, right? We get allergies, and our body, like essentially our immune system, can't keep up with it. But this is a bias. This bias towards this human source of information is actually the cause of this problem. It's the cause of our immune system not being able to deal with the pollen that we breathe in. Or it's not. It's the cause of our inability to, or maybe it's the cause of our sickness or our cancer or something, for example. So what we have to do, I think, is diversify our information even greater, right? So in the same way that you wouldn't want to read only books that are written by communists when there is a capitalist perspective to consider, you also want to touch grass. And I mean that literally. You want to take your shoes off and you want to walk in the grass. You want to get dirty. You want to hug trees, literally. Maybe go climb a tree, right? If you're going to scrape some bark off the tree, maybe let the tree scrape some skin off you. Maybe you bleed a little bit, right? Maybe you go out and you breathe the pollen, okay? Maybe you forage and you eat some of the plants that you see growing around you. And in truth, there's a lot of plants that you can eat that you might not traditionally think, that aren't traditionally sold in grocery stores. So all of this nature, all of this this communication, we could say, that you're having with nature by touching it and breathing it and feeling it, this is information, okay? And the thing about this specific type of information is that it's not so easily, you can't necessarily kind of box it into this logical perspective. You can't follow the causation. You can't determine the causal pathways by which this nature is going to heal you. In other words, the nature you consume, the information you consume when you go out in nature, it's a little less conscious. When you try to find a conscious solution to your high cholesterol, you're going through all of these different pathways by which your body can absorb cholesterol, create cholesterol, and then the cholesterol gets stuck to your arteries and stuff. You're not considering the possibility that there may be unconscious pathways to healing or unconscious solutions to your problems. And those unconscious solutions are nature's solutions. They are given to you when you consume nature's information. And again, that information is just listening to nature, listening to the birds, the frogs that are in this lake in my backyard right now. It's not actually a lake. It's a pool that has been disregarded for some time. So the point here is that you have to consume information that is broader than just the information that's consumed or that is communicated by human language. You can read a book, right, and you can consume the information in the book, but you can also look up through a tree as the sunlight's coming through it, and believe it or not, that is information. It's not the logical information. It's not really so much logically processable in the same way that a book is, but it is information that your body has evolved for thousands of years to benefit from, okay? So when you process the sunlight coming through the trees, when you process the breeze and the pollen that you're breathing in, when you process the tree bark that you're touching or the grass or the dirt that you're touching, it is giving your body information, and that information is going to create unconscious solutions to your problems. And again, you can't communicate these solutions. They're not able to be transformed into human language. What's going on here is essentially horizontal gene transfer. And horizontal gene transfer is such a complicated process. It is such a unique process to yourself that you can't transfer it into human language. You can't track all of the things that are happening in that horizontal gene transfer. You are breathing in viruses and touching viruses and bacteria. And all of this bacteria and viruses and all of the information is interacting with your body and interacting with your DNA and your genes in a way that is just not, that we can just not zero in on as human beings. Even if you stuck all of this information into an AI model, into a supercomputer, and tried to track all of the causal pathways by which this information creates unconscious solutions to you, And what that would be is attempting to make the unconscious solutions conscious. Even if you tried to do that, the AI couldn't do it because your body specifically it is different than mine, and your body's different, and my body's different than everyone else's, because we've had different experiences, we have different genetic predispositions, and ultimately we have different epigenetic predispositions due to our different upbringings, right? So again, there's like a dance that's occurring between you and everything in the environment around you. And if you are participating in that dance, if you are rolling around in the grass, you are going to enable your body to find those unconscious solutions. And you don't even have to worry about how it happens. It's not to be worried about. It's like this is nature's intelligence. It's infinite intelligence that, again, an artificial intelligence model or modern medicine is just not going to be able to keep up with. So, like I said, diversify the sources of information that you take in, and that also goes again for the human sources of information, right? You don't want to read all the books that are pro-America and anti-Soviet Union, for example. You don't want to read all the books that are pro-vegan and not read anything about omnivorous diets or about animal sources of food, right? You want to, again, diversify all of the information, whether it is information coming from other humans or information coming from nature. So if you go on a walk every day down the same bike trail, try a different bike trail. Try to hike in a different part of the woods. Walk in a different direction. Doesn't really matter. Diversify the information and how that information comes to you from nature and from humanity. And what will happen is you will find solutions that you couldn't have expected. Solutions that your rational mind could not have foreseen to your problems. And ultimately, what those solutions, the pattern that those solutions will manifest or will kind of embody is an easing of fear. Okay, so if we think back to what I was originally talking about, where we often bias our information sources from humans, that is, again, what kind of separates us from nature. It's what creates this belief that we are separate from nature. And in that separateness, we automatically adopt a kind of fight or flight mode, where we are fearing everything because we feel separate from it. But when you begin to consume that information from outside of you, from outside of the human source, you begin to realize that you are part of nature, and that there are a lot more symbiotic relationships available to you than there are parasitic relationships. So you might fear getting bit by a tick, right? But in reality, you're not really so much paying attention to the fact that most of the things that grow out of the ground are edible for you, right? You can, like, trees have evolved over millions of years to grow this fucking fruit that tastes like, tastes incredible, right? Like, have you ever had a pineapple? Have you ever had a mango? They're just delicious. And it's like, that is a symbiotic relationship. And there are more of those symbiotic relationships available to you when you step into, when you start to consume the other information that the planet offers you, that the greater ecosystem offers you. So give that a little thought. Okay, thanks for watching.